I'd like to welcome today's panelists again, Professor David Aworawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos, Professor Anthony Kila, Institute Director, Commonwealth Institute of Advanced and Professional Studies, CIAPS, and Jide Ologun, legal practitioner and national development advocate. Gentlemen, thank you very much for showing up. We have close to a full house today. And even Dr. Tereba, who is a regular member of this program, was a guest discussing national issues. Basically, we have looked at a number of issues. NNPC, the dissolution of the board and the appointment of new board members, the crisis in Rivers State, which we discussed with Dr. Ononuju about the new sole administrator, the main sole administrator, now asking for budget and saying that it will be all over the place, and the Rivers State people saying it looks like this thing will go beyond 6 months. We touched on Kogi State, where the Federal High Court has said, look, all the gladiators should just keep quiet and not become contemnors. Contemnors are persons who are contemptuous of the court, either in the face of the court or away from the face of the court. We talked about electoral reform, review of the 2023 elections, and we had Clement Umwankwo of the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, whose center has now done a review of the ballot and the election petitions, and has now done a report that they are planning to present on Wednesday with recommendations as to the way forward. These are some of the issues that we had. 3 guests, and then we had Dr. Ayo Tereba, who specifically talked about Trump tariffs, Trump tantrum, and the implications for Africa, and specifically Nigeria, whether we should retaliate or we should just be neutral. And then, of course, he also talked about, the transformation, the transition at NNPCL. Well, about 5-6 topics. Let's start with you, Professor Kila.
Well, let's start from where you stopped from, the NNPC issue. It is sad to say that the NNPC did not stand out. This board did not stand out for tangible and numerable achievement. Most people will remember them when they were fighting Dangote and his refinery. So I don't think most people will cry that they're gone. I'm sure they've done some things, but those are things that I guess you say only people with refined taste will be able to count what they've done, not for normal people. It is also true that, but not now, a few years ago, under the former president, the lanky one, the fair lanky one that has gone to Daura, that at some point we didn't have queues of fuel anymore. Maybe that can be the achievement, but the board and the management since 2 years have not made strides that are big enough for us to say, let them stay. It's a pity that the removal was not very well detailed. I will move for a total restructure of the NNPC. In terms of the Trump's tariff, well, here we are. It's a roll of dice. History and logic says Trump is wrong, but Trump is not a man that follows logic or history. So, and we dare say that whatever is happening today was not a calculated consequences. Trump is probably a miracle worker because a lot of things that he's doing defy logic and classroom economics and indeed historical literature. So let's see what is going to happen to that. On Africa and Nigeria, it must be said that part of what this tariff exposes to us is that while we do all the shouting about ourselves, in reality, it is countries that we do not talk about, like Lesotho and of course South Africa and other countries, that are the big players in the American market. We perhaps just consume. Moving from 10, did we move to 12 or 14% level of tariff is actually a movement of just +2 or 4. I'm not sure now. It's not a lot that we move because really that tells us we're not doing a lot. So in reality, it is better for us to just keep quiet and see how we can navigate the little tariff that we have because we're not, we're not big players in that. It could be said that we're at the same level of the UK, but I guess people will be able to quantify what that difference is beyond percentages. So let's see how Trump rolls. That's my judgment on him. History and logic is against his position. In Rivers State, those who say they cannot make peace, the gladiators are fighting by themselves, between themselves, so we should let Abuja take care of it. I would invite them to imagine a situation in their own lives. If they live in an estate, if the husband and wife cannot settle their matters, or father and children cannot settle their matter, they should now tell the chairman of the estate to manage their household for them. I think people need to start personalizing this issue to get it straight. Because when we do some kind of pedestrian, cynical, and quite frankly, shallow analysis to say people are fighting, Abuja takes over, we lose the essence of democracy. We lose the point of federalism. I've argued elsewhere, and I'd like to repeat publicly here, that I believe that the move to freeze democracy in Rivers State is an injury to our aspiration for federalism and is an assault to our sense of democracy, which was battled for in 1999, starting from 1999 up to date. I think people need to look at it beyond the lofty concept, which are necessary, not just aesthetics, concept. Beyond the lofty concept, there's something that is a kick in the face of common sense, which is to say that an elected governor cannot be allowed to manage the Commonwealth because he has no house, he's not democratic. Then some man, noble as he may be, I don't know if Nigerian generals fight war or our admirals are, men of that has made a lot of his name in battle. He's picked somewhere and is now allowed to manage that Commonwealth that an elected official cannot manage. We should be careful how history will judge us and how we judge issues. I want to ask people what will happen if there's a state of emergency in Nigeria. Will it be okay for the military to come in and take over from the elected president because he cannot deal with issues of emergency and security across the country? I think we should think about those things. I'll let my colleagues deal with other issues.
Okay, Prof. Professor Aworawo.
Yes, I want to begin with NNPC. I'm happy the president took the decision he took. Something we had advocated a long time. At the other time I was seated here, Dr. Biariri was seated where Barrister Ologun is sitting, and we did say we wondered why the president had not taken action against Kyari especially. Because when Dangote Refinery wanted to commence, they came with all sorts of conspiracies. They even said he didn't have license to operate. They said, his product was substandard. Yes, substandard. Then they said, they won't allow him to have monopoly. And then, that was right. But the follow-up was what was scandalous to many. Instead of now saying that, we will ensure that Port Harcourt Refinery and Warri Refinery, all these refineries work so that there will be monopoly, they say, it's to import. That's where we'll break the monopoly. The comment was made with the head of one of the subsidiaries of NNPC, and Kyari keyed into that. And even when the Dangote Refinery started producing, last month, Dangote Refinery exported to Cameroon, Ghana, South Africa, and even to the US. Yet, NNPC imported fuel, that's petrol and diesel, to the tune of 930 billion naira, almost $1 trillion, only for February. Which means if they're allowed to continue that same routine, in 1 year, they will import over 10 trillion. It is scandalous that we have a refinery that's producing, selling to Ghana, selling to South Africa, selling to... And then they just insisted on importing. There's another question we need to find out. Is it possible to import and sell for 860? Because when Dangote came down to 860, they all started selling for 860. Are they not importing and transferring the losses to NNPC for all of us to carry? Because from the comments initially, they said landing cost, they can't sell for that amount. But because Dangote came down, they too came down, importing these things, just from all over the place. I commend the president, but my commendation is not as vast as it would have been, because he should have taken this action 8-10 months ago, even a year ago. But we commend him all the same. There is never a right time to do right.
I hope you won't be offended that you commend him, because you rarely do that.
No. If somebody, When the student loan was introduced,
you commended
him. I went against ASU and commended him.
Well,
what is good, we'll commend. What is not
decision.
good, we'll condemn. Okay. That's our responsibility as analysts and as intellectuals. Then come down to the nearest one to it is Trump and his tariff. I also said it here. I said we did a study in his first term of the impact. We're actually looking at the impact of the tariff at that time on Africa. Yeah. And we discovered that the level at which a country imports from the US was directly proportional to the impact of the tariff on that country. So countries that could, that were self-sufficient, largely were not affected by the tariff. And that was why we recommended that as much as possible, African countries should wake up and ensure that they are reasonably self-sufficient, expand their manufacturing sector and all that. That was our recommendation. But of course, when you are doing a study, other things you are not focusing on also comes up. And that is that the tariffs affected the US as much as China. And so it didn't make sense, which was why when I spoke about it last week, I said, I just laugh at Americans that they could allow one president to push them to this precipice. And within a week, see what has happened. Chaos. Even Musk himself complained that he lost 8% of his total earning, of total wealth within this period. It is something that is not good for anybody. Advice for Africa, advice for Nigeria. Well, Nigeria, just 14%. Nigeria does, the trade between US and Nigeria has gone down over the years. In the statistics that were released a few weeks ago shows that Spain is the largest importer of Nigerian products, then followed by France, then India in that order. US was down. So trade between US and Nigeria has gone down. So Nigeria does not really need to worry much. I agree entirely with Professor Kila that we should just pretend as if nothing has happened. There's no need going to look for enemy. And of course, we are not strong economically. We are not in that position.
Don't listen to Dr. Abati. That is saying the president should talk. Don't leave the president.
No. The president should just pretend that nothing has happened. There's no need looking for trouble.
Nigeria is a sovereign.
Yeah, we know, yes. But there is no looking for trouble.
Don't listen to Abati. Let's follow.
Where there should be none. There's no need.
Anything Trump says,
there is no need. The Americans cannot endure the way we endure. They will deal with him. The protests have started. I said it before. I said, look, the implosion will come within. A midterm is coming, midterm election. You will see what will happen. And you see, both nationally and globally, when we speak, people should listen to us. When you speak and your speech revolves around facts, you make very few mistakes. Yeah. We said this, don't go that direction. It will be catastrophic. And that is where we are now. Then finally, two things which are linked. Natasha and versus Akpabio and the courts. Yes, don't speak and all that. But you see, and then Rivers. The two are related because these are things that a different direction, a different course of action will have, created stability. What would have been wrong if they had ignored Natasha? Say, she spoke when she was supposed to speak, and then she spoke loudly. Akpabio did that 2018. Saraki ignored him. Or if they must punish her, the trend in the court ruling says 2 weeks. If they had suspended her for 2 weeks, she would have been back by now. And stability would have been restored. Rather, they went a different direction. Let us recall her. 4 women in national, they want to recall one of them to leave 3. The only Ebira there.
5, I think.
As a 5, even if they were 10. I mean, there are too many reasons why they should have just, if you must punish her 2 weeks and let everybody go, and now see the direction they have gone. Then finally, Rivers. We also said it, that there are other ways that this matter could have been resolved. Now, just like Professor Kila said, the governor was not allowed to spend money, no budget, because there were only 4 members of the House. The other 27 were not there. They said that was not equitable. Now there is no House at all, and the administrator from nowhere was not elected, wants to spend the same money. Does that sound logical? It doesn't. But of course, if that must happen, it must go to the National Assembly. All those comments the president was making about regulations, it will not make new laws, but a budget is law. Yes. It's appropriation, yes. So it has to go to the National Assembly. But it is odd. That route shouldn't have been followed in the first place. And we hope that the president will see reason to what you are saying and see at the shortest time possible end this, what they call it now, the emergency, and let life move on with River. It's odd that this man came in. The money the governor who was elected could not spend with 4 legislators, a House of Assembly members. Now a totally new person from nowhere who was not elected, who with no House member at all, is not going to spend that money. It is odd. President Tinubu, please end this emergency as soon as possible, and so that stability can return to Rivers.
Well, okay. Mr. Ologun, let me come to you. And I hope maybe you will start with the electoral issue, from the ballot to the courts, the issue that Clement Nwankwo commented upon, and the recommendations, findings about issues that we still need to address in terms of electoral reform, in addition to whatever other issues that you would like to talk about.
I remain highly impressed by the analysis, particularly when it was disclosed that about 73% of those who approached the court were unable to prove their cases. And we've said that over the months, because Section 131 of the Evidence Act 2011 says that if you bring some facts before the court, you must prove it. And one of the things I also said is that lawyers don't lose cases, clients lose cases, because I also advise that even before the litigants approach the judiciary, weigh your cases very well before you start approaching that stage. And he also mentioned something similar to that, that should the judiciary now be the one to decide who the winners should be. And he also mentioned the 11% of those who didn't even understand the dynamics of these litigations. So I'm happy about that. And it is expected that if INEC lives above board, there may not be just these judicial interventions that we have. And the time space also is a crucial issue. The tribunal must round up within 180 days of the matter coming up before the court. And sometimes the officers affected are in the office, and they can use the powers of office to attend to those cases. So by and large, we need to translate from seeking power to delivering good governance to the citizens. And talking about INEC also, I know that the budget for legal interventions towards the 2023 elections was about 5.19 billion naira for INEC, and that money must be spent. And I think about around 86 million naira for legal drafting and things like that. For some, it's business. In fact, there are lawyers who specialize in electoral matters. It's quite juicy. And haven't spoken about that.
You mean that lawyers, every election petition period is chop time?
Some wait for that season. That is their peak season.
You have proof.
And that is why. And that is why. Yes, we have. And that is why I said.
Okay, who are these lawyers?
Don't lose cases.
There are some people who have the.
You are a lawyer.
Doctor, you know them now.
No, I don't know anybody.
You know them. I put it to you that you know them. So let's come to NNPC, and I want to focus on purpose. NNPC was established on the 1st of April, 1977, 48 years ago, to harness the oil and gas resources of the nation for sustainable national development. But what have we achieved over the years? And thank God for Dangote that came in to shake the table a bit and to even ginger NNPC from rising up from the comatose to start their functions, including the exploration, production, distribution, and of course, managing the revenue. I was disturbed so seriously when I read about 100 billion used to turn around moribund refinery. So what is the implication for us? The Chinese say that the best time to have planted a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. Yes, I align with Professor Aworawo that I was also expecting that before now, a great shake-up should take place in NNPC. But if the president did that, I think he's been quite strategic. It should have been explosive. The issue of ethnicity will come in and everything. But it's obvious now that we need to reposition NNPC. But I'm not going to celebrate too much. I recall that when Dr. Ibe Kachukwu became the Minister of State for Petroleum, he served between 2015 and 2019. NNPC came out, we even produce electricity, we do this and this and that. So I throw it back to the president. Sir, what do you want to achieve? Is it prosperity for the nation, or just to rejig that structure so that business continues as usual? Because when we talk about the importation, the inability to give crude oil to Dangote in exchange for Naira, we should not forget that we have mortgaged our resources. We have borrowed money with this crude oil in advance. So there are fundamental crises that we have. So to what extent will the technocrats be able to drive the process to deliver prosperity to citizens? I leave them with the concept of Joseph in the Bible, how Joseph was able to turn away the famine and he brought abundance to the land. And again, like the elders say, who pays the piper dictates the tune. So again, to what does the president want to achieve? But I wish the nation prosperity so that they benefit from these abundant resources that God has given us. And that brings us to Rivers State. I'm seeing beyond what is on ground. When you talk about democracy, the governor is expected to present the budget to the House of Assembly, which is the legislative arm. Now, both governor and legislative arm are no longer there. I know that by virtue of Section 11 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, if the State House of Assembly cannot operate, National Assembly can step in to assist, and the Federal Executive Council will be also involved in the management through the state of emergency. So who is the sole administrator presenting the budget for appropriation? And we have heard today that Fubara left about 200 billion naira and some other funds. So what will we be reading about? Then for how long will this declaration of state of emergency be? So there are several approaches, and I hope that political solution and public relations solution is brought into this crisis. Otherwise, after the budget and everything, some litigations may still spring up. That what power has a sole administrator to come and be spending money? So I just want us to save the energy of the nation towards development. And about Trump, protests going on in the US, but you see, the Americans know who they have voted for. Donald Trump will be Donald Trump. And of course, as many countries of the world also complain, I think his policies, is for the rich. And that is why we have in the protests, those who are saving for their retirements are shouting that, hey, we don't see a bright future here.
The
But
rich are affected.
But again, with an analytical mind, I've looked at Trump because some of the countries who got angry are beginning to say, okay, can we talk? You talk about Mexico, you talk about some other countries also. So I wish him the best. But again, the elders have a saying that it's better to measure 10 times and cut once than to measure once and cut 10 times. But it's a difficult thing for Trump to measure 10 times, knowing his person. But again, for Africa and for Nigeria, I won't say the government should just fold arms and be watching. It is time to develop local capacity, domestic capacity, so that we also can be strong in the polity of nations. And on the case of Natasha, I'm glad that the court has stepped in to say, right now, sheath your sword, and let's find solutions to all these crises. But again, it was disclosed today that deep behind the Natasha Akpabio matter are financial issues. And I hope prayer points have not been posted to the email of some of the National Assembly members that there are some money. I listened to that.
No, we have no proof.
Some have said it. So, and you cannot rule that out. But whatever the case may be, there are refined ways of managing conflicts. And I suggest that, particularly to people at that level, so that we don't continue.
Dr. Wadi, before we
But the better refined way is to stay with the facts,
To stay with the facts.
not with speculations,
In
not
less
with
than a
hearsay.
minute, Doctor, but for me to just say, on the NNPC issue, it would be good to remind the president, while everybody is complimenting him, to remove himself as minister as well of petroleum as part of the general reforms since we start with NNPC. In a country of 200 million people, there is no need for one man to be president and minister of petroleum. The other thing is, I appeal to the bar at this point. We need to start looking at Mr. Ologun's colleagues. These lawyers who go to court and 73% of their cases cannot be argued. We need to start looking at them as well. Are these lawyers doing their job well? That conversation needs to be had.
Okay, we have heard you. The president should carry the honey pot of Nigeria and give to somebody.
Professor Aworawo.
Professor Aworawo. I thought you were going to mention Minister Wike as Minister of Petroleum.
I love Nigeria. I won't ask for that. Let's give it to Professor Aworawo.
Anyway, let's take another subject. Lagos commuters returning to work last Wednesday from the Eid al-Fitr holidays were confronted by a devastating traffic gridlock around Victoria Island, Ikoyi, and surrounding areas, following the closure of Independence Bridge for maintenance repairs. It was an experience better forgotten, as most people caught in the chaos had to spend as much as 12 hours snarled up in their vehicles and were unable to get to their offices and places of work. Well, all of you live on the mainland. I don't know whether you can comment on this from a personal experience. Who lives on the island here? Professor Aworawo, no. You are close to the island. You live somewhere far away. Mr. Ologun, where do you live?
Do business on the island.
Okay, I'll start with you, since you do business on the island.
And on that day, I escaped it because I was to come for a meeting in Via, and I called the client who said he had to turn back to go home. And I already read about that project. So, and knowing Nigeria, I did foresee it was going to be a tough experience, but I didn't know it was going to be that traumatic. And I quite appreciate the response of the government. I listened to the governor coming to apologize to the citizens, but some are saying, you know, in the midst of all this, let's look at the impact on the people. And I also monitored the Honorable Minister of Works, who said that the officer in the Lagos zone did not obtain the final permission before proceeding. So I think these are issues, but the government is insisting to avoid greater danger and calamities. That project must go on. But now the management will be more organized and more refined, not to be traumatic on the citizens. So we want to appeal to the stakeholders to put in their best, and of course to the citizens to also understand that this project must go on, because the government could have ignored, and God forbid that someday that bridge caves in. So once again, we want to relate with those who passed through the trauma. By now, they should have overcome it.
Yeah. And I think moving forward, there's some basic steps. Let's not make it sound as complex equation to run. There's some basic steps that needs to be done, and those are just clear instructions that when a road needs to be interrupted, we should agree a minimum of time for which commuters should be warned that this is going to be happening on the road. The alternative routes should be heavily advertised, and there should be guidelines to avoid things like this. And it happens too many times in some very simple roads where people are not doing these things. There's a way to Unilag on the road that many times, good thing they're doing, they're maintaining it, but they'll just block it until you get there. You won't see what's going on. I think we need to develop that culture of what you call consumer citizen-centric processes.
Exactly. What happened, yes, the repairs needed to be done, but I want to speak so that moving forward, we don't punish our people unnecessarily. Yeah. After that crisis that day, the next day, one side was blocked, the other side was open. That eased traffic tremendously. They should have done that right from the beginning.
Just think it through.
The road from Unilag Gate to Bariga, they did it for about 3 years. People suffered terribly. There's one other road to Community Road around that place. One morning we just woke up, we were going to work. They started demolishing, breaking people's fences. There's one College of Education there, Project Time, they demolished the fence. Yeah. There was some tar there, they removed the tar. And went away. 2 years after that, they didn't come back. So the road was left worse than when they came. I mean, they should look for better ways of fixing this thing. Some of these things can be done at night. Absolutely. When traffic is light. You know, sometimes I even go to them and say, but why are you doing this? They will tell me, can't you just endure? I say, yes, we can endure, but if we can reduce the suffering, why don't we go that route? Sometimes they will just block everywhere. They say, we are repairing. You have to endure because we are. If there are things you can do to lessen the stress, do that. That road is both sides shouldn't have been blocked at the same time. As it started doing the next day, where one side was blocked, the other side was open, it eased the traffic. That is what we should be doing going forward. We seem to lack ability for critical thinking and then to manage things in a manner in which people, the inconvenience to people will be less. And that is what I recommend going forward.
Okay, we'll just take one more story, and this is about Marine Le Pen. And Professor Aworawo, I'll be coming back to you. A French court last Monday barred French far-right leader Marine Le Pen from running in the 2027 presidential election after she was convicted of embezzlement in a ruling that could fuel global tensions over judicial efforts to police politics. The French court's ruling was a catastrophic setback for 56-year-old Le Pen. The National Rally Party chief is one of the most prominent figures of the European far-right and a frontrunner in polls for France's 2027 contest. The ruling could have wide-ranging repercussions for French politics, upending the race to succeed President Emmanuel Macron and placing additional pressure on his weak minority government, enfeebled after months of consecutive crisis. Professor Aworawo.
Yeah, Marine Le Pen has been gradually she's expanded her political base. In the last election, she did far better than...
No, but they say she embezzled funds.
Yes.
From the EU Parliament.
Yes.
So are you justifying embezzlement?
No, not at all. She was doing well, but now she has shot herself in the foot. And that is surprising, given her vibrancy. You would imagine that someone who of her stature and what she claims to stand for will stay clear of anything that has to do with corruption and embezzlement. So it's a contradiction. But for the mainstream, they will be very, very relieved because France is going increasingly to the right. The last election revealed that. They will give a sigh of relief that maybe this will just be the last for Marine Le Pen and that she may never be able to come back, to pose a threat to the center again. But I don't see it as politically motivated because the case of embezzlement seems to have been clearly established. And of course, if you are not in power yet, you're already embezzling. Then if you are in charge, what do we expect? So I support totally the action against Marine Le Pen.
Well, very quickly.
Well, I think there are lessons to learn from there, from other countries in the world, Nigeria in particular. Number one lesson is that people get bad from running for politics if they do bad things, e.g. embezzle. There are two bad things Nigerian politicians do, and at worst they go to prison, but they don't actually get a sentence telling them not to run for office. One is to embezzle, the other is to rig elections. Those are crucial things, and I think until we're able to establish that law, that whoever violates the Electoral Act or embezzle money, beyond going to jail and refunding the money, hopefully, can also be punished for not standing for election. That's a very important thing. I think it's a very bold decision that they've done this to Marine Le Pen because she is being popular, and for them to do that, knowing the kind of party she runs, which is an emotional, charismatic, non-logical party, chances are they revolt. But unlike Professor Aworawo, I want people to think extremists are really good people. Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, most of them, of the extremists, they tend to be corrupt down. They just make that noise on the surface. Deep down, they tend to be corrupt. They're never intergerrimous as they appear.
Mr. Ologun.
From what I read, the window of appeal is still open. And some are not persuaded that this conviction is not politically motivated, given her growing popularity. So we'll see what happens, particularly when an election is approaching. But she's not giving up, and we've not read the last about that matter, legally speaking.
Certainly. This is not the last of the story. Thank you very much, Mr. Ologun. Thank you, Professor Aworawo, and thank you, Professor Anthony Kila. You've been watching This Day Live, a Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abate. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.